And I didn't know this, but you can go and get your prescription filled at $8 for a month. Many people, and that's any veteran. You don't have to have a service-connected disability or anything. You can just go over there and get your prescriptions filled at $8 for a month, and that's a pretty good deal. And you can get physicals and all types of things. And as the doctor pointed out to me, all of the different departments are under one roof. So if you need to see a pulmonologist, he's there. If you need to see a cardiologist, he's there. Audiologist, for those of us that are a little bit over 60 and our hearing is going south faster than a lot of other things, you can get all this taken care of. And if you qualify, you can get yourself about a $10,000 hearing aid for a very low price, in some cases zero.
The welcome mat is out at the VA hospitals. The welcome mat is out. They want the veterans, and you don't necessarily not have to have health insurance at this time. They will accept your health insurance plan.
That's right.
And approximately 30%, that's all, of veterans know about our benefits. And one of them, the biggest thing, is, of course, the VA hospital system. Bar none, it is the top of the line. The best of the best. They took care of us when we were in the service, and they're taking care of us now. And
there's an awful lot of us over there now. I've been noticing that. And it's not World War II veterans any longer, because we know, unfortunately, they're passing away at a pretty quick rate. But it's the Vietnam veterans. And, of course, and Bob, I know you wanted to talk about this, it's the current veterans that are coming home from Afghanistan and Iraq. And they need our help, and they need the VA. And we want to make sure that we encourage them to go there for their help. In fact, we'll just go right into it now. We wanted to talk about our Welcome Home segment. As all of you know, our Welcome Home segment is designed to bring home the troops, or to honor the troops that have served overseas. And I know you have something you want to get to first.
I have something right here, Dale. It's called Salute to the Armed Forces. Where can you go today? If you got a family of 4, where can you go today and have a good time for under $20? Where can you go? There really isn't anywhere. It's real. Oh, what a nice segue. I love it. Well, you can come to Ypsilanti on September the 4th at Reinerson Stadium for a football game. The Army cadets from West Point are playing the Eastern Michigan Eagles for the second year in a row. Their kickoff to their season begins at 7 o'clock p.m. Now, what was I talking about before? Well, per ticket, $3. What a deal.
That's right.
That's a large Coke at McDonald's. $3 get you in the game, and before the game, bring your family, bring yourself, bring mom, bring grandma, bring grandpa. Come on to the Veterans Tent. Veterans Radio will be there. Our LTC will be there. The Army Cadets will be there. We have a special area that will be for veterans and non-veterans too, but especially for veterans. If you happen to have a group and you would like to be part of the tent the tent complex, let's put it that way, then please get with Eastern Michigan University, which I'll give you that number in just a second. But it's only $3 per person. $3, what a deal. $12 for a family of 4.
They are encouraging veterans organizations, the American Legion, the DAV, Paralyzed Veterans. We're right on the sidewalk there, so it's easily accessible for anybody who has a little bit difficulty moving around. The VFW, Vietnam Veterans of America, you're all encouraged to come on out. They're giving you a deal on the tickets, $3.
$3.
And you need to order them before the game. That's the only hitch in the whole thing, but that's fine. You can order them online at emueagles.com and use the promotional code SALUTE, lowercase, SALUTE, SALUTE, and you get $3 per ticket. You come on down to our pregame tent party.
And you can eat. We're going to have hot dogs and burgers and pop and water.
Entertainment. And you're going to get to meet all kinds of other veterans. I bet you didn't know there were that many veterans that lived in the greater Washtenaw County area.
This is the second year that they've had the Salute to Armed Forces. Let's give them a big showing. At 7 o'clock in the evening, those other guys are playing football down the road. We don't, right.
You can't afford to even think about going to that game.
Yeah, $50 a ticket. $3, folks.
$65.
$3 per person to get in the game. The game starts at 7 o'clock. We will be there at 4 o'clock. We will be setting up at 4 o'clock. Probably food won't be started to be served till close to 6 o'clock. But come on in for the camaraderie. Meet your fellow veterans, other veterans. Bring a group of friends. By the way, this is the $3 ticket is for military and non-military, as long as you're identify yourself as being with military people. So once again, that's Saturday, September 4th, 2010, Reinerson Stadium, right in beautiful Eastern Michigan University.
Give them the phone number, Bob.
Oh, I think I could do that. 734-487-2282. Once again, 734-487-2282. Call them now.
Absolutely. And segueing from that, we're going to go into our Welcome Home segment.
Thank you, Dale. Each week on Veterans Radio, we welcome home military personnel who've returned to our country after be serving overseas. And something very important and very poignant has happened this past week. The 4th Brigade, members of the Strikers, 4th Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, left Iraq. By the way, they're nicknamed after the vehicle that delivers troops in and out of battle. And the 4th Brigade, Stryker Brigade, 2nd Infantry Division, has been in some of the most fiercest battles in the battles of Iraq. That was 70 years ago, folks. 7 years ago. We're now starting to stand down in Iraq. There were 4,000 members of the brigade originally, and they're now gone. The last of them, except for just a few hundred, have left Iraq. Now, that doesn't mean that we've lost our commitment. Still 50,000 are staying behind, but they're in non-combat roles. So our presence in Iraq is far from over, but the mission changes from combat operations to stability operations. Dale, you have something to add on that?
Well, I just wanted to mention that they are coming home in great numbers, which is really exciting for us here at Veterans Radio. We've been welcoming them home for, as Bob pointed out, for 7 years, and we're so grateful that they are coming home safely. We're anxious to put our political statement in that hopefully sometime soon we're going to be coming home from Afghanistan also. And that just kind of leaves, before we do our thank you for our welcome home advertisement, I guess you could say, for the Marine Scholars Program. Bob is going to be doing a program next week, I believe it is.
Next week.
Where we're going to be talking about the Wounded Warriors Project.
That's right.
And
this
is so important to support, and we want to make sure that you tune in next week on the 28th of August and listen to Bob's program on the Wounded Warriors.
We have not forgotten them. We have not forgotten them. Afterward, you want to tune into the program to find out what the Army Wounded Warrior Program is all about. I think you're going to be excited. I was very excited to make this contact, and I can't wait till next week.
It's going to be exciting. We've always pointed out that we had your back when we were in country, wherever it was, and we've got your back now that you're home.
You know, they're giving those soldiers, those wounded soldiers, lifetime commitment. Lifetime. Let me say that again. Lifetime. God bless America. God bless our troops. On behalf of a grateful nation and all of us at Veterans Radio, to those that served in Iraq and those that came home, God bless and welcome.
And we are back on Veterans Radio. And I just want to read the first chapter or first line from a book we're going to be talking about today. It's entitled A Final Flight from Manduria by W.D. Hanford, and I'm going to have WB on in just a moment. But on April 12th, 1944, Chiquita Mia, a B-24 bomber that was built in Willow Run, Michigan, by the way, crashed in Yugoslavia. She was one of 9,949 American bombers downed over Nazi-occupied Europe during World War II. That's 9,949. Of the 82,000 men on those planes, 70,000 died. 12,000 became prisoners of war. A few escaped capture in occupied countries, always with the help of daring anti-Nazis risking their lives to shield them. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Bill Hanford, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Bill. How are you? We need to turn up your volume just a little bit.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. There we go.
Okay.
Bill, how did you get involved in this story? What brought you to write this one?
Well, the navigator of the plane was a very close friend of mine. We had run on a track team together And just before I went overseas, I came back to visit the campus there at what's now Eastern Michigan University, and he was missing in action. And so when I came back from the war and I walked into this room with my new roommate, I discovered here it is, Bob Archer. And so we roomed together, and we were, well, I was the best man at his wedding, and he was best man at my wedding, and we were like brothers. And as close, I never had a brother, a real brother, but he was every bit the brother to me that anyone born from the same mother and father could have been. And, of course, I understand you have his son, Jeffrey, there in the studio with you.
I do have Jeffrey in his studio with me, and I'm going to bring him on in just a little bit. And as we're running around here a little bit like chickens with our heads cut off because our intercommunication between the control room and the studio is not working correctly today. But so you were talking with Bob Archer about his experiences during World War II, and this has kind of motivated you to write the book. Is that correct?
Well, after I had, as a matter of fact, I actually wrote this book before I wrote my own, because it seemed to me a terrifically exciting story where an entire crew all were back home before the war was over. And two of them were imprisoned. One of them lost an arm, and Archer led all of the gunners from the plane on a 300-mile trek across Yugoslavia to a clandestine airfield where they were flown out. So it was a very exciting story. So Archer and I would go play golf with some of our fraternity brothers, and I would tape his story as we went. And on after about three golf outings like that, I had enough tape so I could start it. And I finally got a hold of the pilot who lived in Lansing, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I got all the newspapers in which he told his story during when he was home. He was brought home on a prisoner exchange, and so he was home in January of 1945.
Well, let's take a look at this story. The title of your book is called "A Final Flight from Manduria," and in the book, Bill goes all through the training and the meeting of this whole crew, and we just don't have enough time to cover all of that today. But what I'd like to do is to get up to that April 12th day, and we're talking about a crew of 3, 6, 9, 12. How big is the crew on a B-24?
12.
12? All right. So they take off on their mission, and tell me what types of missions they were doing.
Officers. 6 gunners and 4 officers.
Okay.
Co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, and then the 6 gunners who all have a technical job in addition to the manning a machine gun when they're under attack.
Tell me what happened on that day, on April 12th.
Well, they were on their way to Wiener Neustadt in Austria to bomb the Messerschmitt plant. And on these, when you're on your way to bomb any major factory, the flak is always great because they set up all their machine guns and anti-aircraft guns to ward off these attacks. And so they actually were hit before they got near Wiener Neustadt. They hadn't even gotten past Vienna, which is right close. When the co-pilot saw smoke coming from one of the motors, one of the engines, and so they had to turn back after a second engine started to smoke. and they got clear back to Yugoslavia. Some of them had to jump in Hungary, right near the border. That included Archer, and
so these men were bailing out. They were parachuting
bailing out. Right, and the pilot couldn't bail out because the automatic pilot failed, and so he had to crash land, and that's how he got his arm so smashed up that eventually he had to have it amputated. But all 10 of the crew were back home in the States before the war was officially over, even before it was over in Europe.
Well, how did that happen? What happened to these men when they bailed out?
Well, Archer and the 6 gunners all got out and got with the underground, the partisans, and holed up in a mountain. A mountain, it was called Pakuk Mountain in extreme north part of Yugoslavia, Croatia, as a matter of fact. When you know what is currently Croatia, as Yugoslavia was broken up, and they were there for about 6 weeks, and then they decided to get them back to Italy, and so they had to take a long march across Italy, during which time a lot of exciting things happened. They stole a train first and blew that up, and then they a couple of the partisans stole a plane, one of the planes that the Germans used to patrol Yugoslavia, an old one-engine biplane. But very exciting stuff.
I think so. I'm going to bring on Jeff right now to talk a little bit about that. So, and Bob, if we could turn on his microphone to make sure he's ready to go. I'm going to introduce Jeff Archer. Welcome to Veterans Radio, Jeff.
Thank you, Dale. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jeff is the son of Bob Archer, who was a navigator on the Chiquita Mia. I think that's the way you pronounce it, at least the way I speak my Spanish.
It is, yes, sir.
And I just want to know a little bit about what your dad might have told you about this escape from Yugoslavia.
Well, Uncle Hank, first of all, it's good to hear your voice. Hope you and family are well.
Oh, great. And I'll ask you later on about your family, too, okay?
Yes, sir. But I wanted to say thank you to Dale and to Bob for this Veterans Radio project. Dale, some of the stories I remember best, Dad, that day of April 12th, went out to the Bombay, and when he landed, he, of course, has to avoid capture by the Germans and get out of his parachute and his harness and his Mae West. And in those days, the Mae West were these, if you bailed out over water, the Mae West was an inflatable piece of equipment, and it was a bright yellow so that you could be spotted. So he wants to get out of his parachute, and he wants to get out of his Mae West quickly and avoid capture. And very, very quickly, women from a local village saw him descending, and of course, quickly, he's surrounded by these local women, and he's thinking, oh my gosh, what happens next? What do I do? And gets out of his harness, gets out of his Mae West, heads off to the hills, and quickly recognized the women weren't interested in him. They were interested in his silk parachute.
That's true, and I remember reading in the book that they used this parachute almost as a bartering tool. They cut up pieces of it to give to various people to move their way across.
Yeah, a very valuable piece of equipment in or cloth in occupied Europe.
Well, when Bob Archer was not the only one that ran into these partisans, there were a couple of other members of his crew that were there. Is that correct?
That's right. Oh no, they weren't there at the same time. he was separated from them for quite a long time.
Okay, that's all right. I misunderstood, but that's okay. Yes, Jeff?
Well, I wanted to remind all of our listeners of war, and I'm reminded of a motion picture, Wolfgang Petersen, Das Boot, and human beings being put in this extraordinary situation of combat. And while Dad was alone, again, trying to avoid capture, I learned as a very young man a story of my father's when the Germans were pursuing him and Dad was up in the hills. The Germans, of course, in Yugoslavia, an occupied country, controlled the day, but the partisans controlled the night. And the Germans were just as afraid, as you see in this Wolfgang Petersen film. The Germans were just as afraid. And Dad told a story of how in pursuit of this air crew, of his air crew, the Germans would, from far below, would set up would set up a mortar and shoot rounds up into the hills so that they, of course, could tell their superiors, hey, we've looked for this air crew and we've done our job, but we're not going to pursue them any farther than we have to in again, trying to take care of our own lives.
Well, one of the things that I found in reading the book, and the book is called The Final Flight from Manduria, which is an air base in Italy, is that we're talking with Bill Hanford, the author of this story, is that many of the German troops did not want to cause too much concern, I guess you could say, because they didn't want to go to the Eastern Front. And so, they wanted to go out and pretend that they're doing this great job. And, oh, yeah, we're out there looking for all these, these pilots and crew members and so forth. And we'll find them. But, if we screw up, don't send us to the Eastern Front, because nobody wanted to go to the Eastern Front. I can certainly understand that. If you'd like to join in on the conversation, you can give us a call here at Veterans Radio. It's a toll-free number. It's 877-573-7825. That's 877-573-7825. And we're talking about an air crew of a B-24 that was shot down over Yugoslavia in 1944. And what happened to the crew? Some of them escaped, and a number of them were captured and put into POW camps. Isn't that correct, Bill?
Just two of them.
Can you tell me a little bit about what happened with those?
Just the bombardier and the co-pilot.
Okay.
They were, and for some reason or other, I had to do some research beyond just what Archer told me and what I got from the newspaper that Sebastian, the pilot, he told his story to. I did some further research, and I got a hold of the Air Force Academy, and they sent me some of the pictures that I sent you, especially that of the band that played at Luft Stalag 3, which is the Stalag that was famous in movies for The Great Escape. The Great Escape had taken place 6 weeks before the members of the Chiquita Mia crew arrived there.
Well,
so
I don't need to interrupt, but it's interesting because I was reading a book in my own little research for this program, and I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Spinelli, I believe it was, and he was a photographer in World War II, and he snuck a camera into Stalag 3 and has lots of pictures. He had the same picture that you sent me of an orchestra or band was in his book.
Oh, yeah. Well, part of that is a very interesting thing. One of the great heroes of World War II was a Swede. And you have his picture, too.
Yep.
All of a sudden, I can't think of his name, but he was
That was Mr. Soderberg.
Yeah, Soderberg. He made regular trips to the Stalags and he brought them the band equipment. He brought them Bibles. He brought them other books. He brought records. He brought all kinds of stuff for them.
We're gonna. I'm sorry. I need to interrupt you here for just a second. We're coming up at the bottom of the hour. I want to continue that and talk a little bit about the life in the POW camps because I don't think many of our audience know all about that. We'll be right back. Right. You're listening to Veterans Radio.
The Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in combat given a member of the Armed Forces of the United States. There have been over 3,400 recipients of the nation's highest award. This is one of them. Pharmacist Mate Second Class William Halliburton, Jr. used his own body to shield a wounded Marine. Details after this. Undaunted by the deadly accuracy of Japanese fire as his unit pushed the attack through a strategically important draw, Halliburton unhesitatingly dashed across the draw and up the hill into an open fire-swept field where the company advance squad was pinned down under a heavy concentration of mortar, machine gun, and sniper fire with resultant severe casualties. Moving steadily forward despite the enemy's merciless barrage, he reached the wounded Marine who lay farthest away and was rendering first aid when his patient was struck for the second time by a Japanese bullet. Instantly placing himself in the direct line of fire, he shielded the fallen Marine with his own body and staunchly continued his treatment, although constantly menaced by the slashing fury of shrapnel and bullets falling on all sides. Alert, determined, and completely unselfish in his concern for the helpless Marine, he persevered in his efforts until he himself sustained mortal wounds and collapsed, heroically sacrificing himself that his comrade might live.
The Medal of Honor series is a production of Veterans Radio.
And we are back on Veterans Radio, and we are talking with Bill Hanford, the author of A Final Flight from Manduria, which is about a B-24 bomber that was shot down over Yugoslavia on April 12th, 1944. And we're trying to it's really difficult, Bill, in a short hour to talk about the stories of all of these crewmen. But I wanted to concentrate a little bit on what happened to the men that went to the POW camp. Can you tell me a little bit about their experiences?
Well, in the first place, when they were captured, they went into the house of a Yugoslav couple, and the Yugoslav couple were scared silly because they knew that the Germans were lurking around there, and sure enough, the next morning the German troops came in there, and they were under orders to be very severe with the Yugoslavs who did anything at all to help the American flyers. And so, I'm sorry. They burned they killed the two people and burned their house down, and that was a very hard experience for these two American flyers to have to see. And somehow or other they separated the two of them, and one of them was sent to Luftstalag 3 and the other to Luftstalag 4, which was only for enlisted men. Now the German prisons were separated. Officers were sent to one kind of a camp, and the enlisted men to another. And by the Articles of War, the officers could not be made to work. So that they basically they had to find all kinds of things for them. And this Soderberg brought lathes and power tools, and so they had a regular machine shop for these guys. And they had this. They had two kinds of bands. They had a marching band, and they had a swing band. And part of the story is how the bombardier, who was a fan of big band music, how he got involved with doing some trading. Well, they had they had food parcels that were brought in by the Red Cross. And now Soderbergh was working for the International YMCA. Mm-hmm. He was not working for the Red Cross. But anyway, they got parcels regularly, and they supplemented what food the Germans did give them, which was next to nothing. And so the bombardier got involved with one of the goons. They called the guards goons, and they were called Kriegies, which was Kriegsfallenungen. I don't really know the German word, but that's sort of like it. It was a name for the prisoners, and so there were all kinds of stuff going on. They were trading between them, and it's you said earlier something about this photographer mm-hmm. who got clandestine photographs taken. Now the photographs of the band were illegal. They were taken by Soderbergh, and they were just for the showing to the Red Cross, which was trying to protect the prisoners from unjust treatment.
I think it's I don't mean to interrupt here for just a second, but I think it's interesting for our audience to know that some of these programs that were in POWs, we don't want to say that POW was easy. That obviously was not easy, because you were always threatened with somebody just going to shoot you that day. But there were propaganda things that the Germans wanted to do, because they had signed the Geneva Convention on how they were going to treat prisoners of war. And in some camps, especially those that were closer to metropolitan areas, I guess you could say, where people could drop in and see them, were probably a little bit nicer than ones that were deeper into the heartland of Germany. But and they were separated by countries too, because I know that the Americans, Americans are always known for trading stuff, it seems, and American ingenuity, and so they would trade things. But in this one picture that I saw in that book, a Russian soldier was killed trying to get a cigarette that an American had thrown toward him, but it hadn't gone all the way across the fences. And the pictures that we had, and I'm sorry we don't have the webcasting today, and I can't wait till your book is published, Bill, because I think people will really like it. But there are signs that are written in...
That's a good point. This book has not been published, and if there's an agent listening, I'd like to have him get in touch with me.
Well, we will work on that, because I know that I'm going off to the Military Writers Society's conference in Pittsburgh at the beginning of October, so we'll get a chance to chat about that. Maybe we'll run into one while we're there.
Oh, I'm a member of that outfit.
I know you are.
Yeah, Military Writers Association of America, yeah.
It's a great group. So we have these two men that were in the prisoner of war camps, and just briefly for our audience, toward the end of World War II, as the Russians were coming from the east, they started to move some of these prisoners, which ended up being the worst part of their entire incarceration, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Luftstalag 3 was almost a country club as far as they were. They had entertainment, they had plays, they had the musical outfits, and and it was just terrible once they had to take them out in sub-zero weather, and a lot of them died in just being transported around to try to avoid having the Russians rescue them. Yeah.
Your story does a great job of explaining getting into the mind of these men when he talks about, especially the prisoners of war that were captured in some of their trains that they're racing across Germany to get to someplace else, and our bombers are dropping bombs on the railroad trains.
Sure.
And in many cases, probably there were some that were killed by friendly fire. But also, sure. Again, I can't imagine the trauma that these men were going through.
No, I know.
And
well, for me, that was something that I didn't have to experience in my time in the war, and so I feel as you do. I just can't imagine how awful they must have felt because what I went through, where your body would just be uncontrollably shaking in fear. That kind of stuff was always a part of the experience of going through that war.
Mm-hmm. Or any war. Your generation, right up until today's generations, it's you can do whatever it is they tell you to do. It's when you're done and you find out that you survived that you start shaking uncontrollably sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly.
And
I describe it at one point as being similar to how you feel when you've been in an auto accident, and at first you don't fully appreciate it, and then just before the police or the ambulances arrive, then you suddenly have this terrible experience of your body just being out of control.
Oh, absolutely. And I think all of us have gone through that, even as a little kid who fell out of a tree or anything along those lines. You're going, oh, my God, I'm so excited. I'm alive. Yep. What happened to me? How did I do this? How did I do this? You mentioned... one
of the things that Archer and I discovered in rooming together there at Ypsilanti, one of the things we discovered was that we call it the high of survival, in which you would immediately you would feel almost joy at having survived, and then of course later it would just reverse itself, and you would be almost suicidal and you regret at having survived while these other guys all died.
I think that's true. And Jeff, I'm going to ask you to come on about the question, because we talked about this a little bit at breakfast, of how our fathers sometimes would be so upbeat and so on and so forth, but there were times when you could see that their mind had gone back.
Yes, sir.
Right, exactly.
Yes, sir. It was very rare that Dad would speak of some of these things, and as long as I've known Uncle Hank...
forever.
Exactly. Those stories were infrequent, but when they happened, Dale, I knew that it was time to listen, that there were very powerful messages there. I'm reminded, for example, as a former history teacher, that in World War I, we called it shell shock.
Mm-hmm.
Today, it's called post-traumatic stress disorder. All these years later, we still need to remember our veterans and how to deal with such turmoil in one's life.
And I think that's important, and that's what Bob's going to be talking about next week when we do talk about the Wounded Warrior Project.
Yes, sir.
Is how do we continue to take care of these men and women, especially and women today, that have been in situations that you're not supposed to be in. Most of us, whatever generation you are, you're not supposed to see these things when you're 19, 20 years old.
No.
In fact, hopefully you're never going to see them ever in your life. But as Bill or Uncle Hank just pointed out, we're going to confuse our audience here. But when you've seen a civilian killed because you were hiding in your house, in their house, that's going to weigh on you the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I can't imagine that. We got about 20 seconds until we're going to take another break, so I'm going to ask you both to hold on here. We're talking with Bill Hanford, who's the author of a book that's not published yet for all of you agents out there, A Final Flight from Manduria. It's an exciting story about a crew from a B-24 jumping into and landing in Yugoslavia. We'll be right back. You're listening to Veterans Radio. What great music. Every generation has great music.
And what was the name of that tune?
I don't know. I'll have to...
oh, well, mister, that was your homeland. Jersey
Bounce.
Yeah, you got excellent, man.
I recognize it. I think it was something that my mom and dad used to dance to on the, they'd roll back the carpet, and whenever my dad would get up to dance for one time in the evening, he would only dance one fast dance, and it would go about 30 seconds, and he'd go, that's it. But my sister and my mother did, I remember that, Jersey Bounce.
Jersey Bounce.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks. We're talking with Bill Hanford, author of a new book. We're looking for a publisher, so get out there and let's see if we can find one. A Final Flight from Manduria, about a B-24 that was shot down on April 12th, 1944, over Yugoslavia. We had 2 people that were captured in POW camps. We had the pilot of the aircraft who went down with the ship. That's not a Navy term, that's an Air Force. He took that aircraft down and crash landed and survived the crash, only to end up in a German POW hospital, wasn't he?
No hospital. They were
hospital.
They were in a stalag. They were when they evacuated Luft stalag. Now Luft meaning this is for airmen only, and officers only in 3, and in 4 there were only enlisted men. So insofar as flyers were all at least, I don't think very many of them were below sergeant, but they would all be non-coms in Luftstalag 4, which is in farther into Poland, and the Luftstalag 3 was in Sagan, Germany, but it's now Zagon, Poland. So it was fairly close to Berlin. It was like 100 miles southeast of Berlin. But that was like a country club in terms of and the fact that 100 and some men dug a tunnel that was as long as a football field.
Wow.
To dig their way out before the Great Escape that took place before the time of my story there. The fact that they would try to dig out of what was such a great camp tells you that being imprisoned is never acceptable to the prisoners, especially those who were shot down early in the war and were there as long as 4 or 5 years.
Right, absolutely, and you wonder, after the Great Escape occurred, those that didn't get out, did not they execute quite a number of them?
50 of them. 50 of them were simply murdered on orders from Hitler.
Right, I was talking with Jeff earlier about a friend of mine whose father had been a POW and a pilot during World War II, and I could see on his face sometimes when he would think about what he had survived, and it's just amazing. And then then we go to the other, not the other extreme, but we go to these other men like your dad, who is doing her own escape and evasion for a number of months, and ends up where, in Washington? Where did he end up after he got home?
Well, he first was taken to Washington and spent 3 or 4 days there being interrogated by Air Force intelligence at the new Pentagon building. It was a new building then. And then he was told he could do anything he wanted, and then he took pilot training and became a fighter pilot before the end of the war, and he got his wings just a couple days before VJ Day.
Oh my goodness! So he ended up being qualified as a pilot, but he was never really able to use that.
No, but he got his wings.
And then what did he do when he came back?
Well, they told him he could stay in or take a discharge. He took the discharge.
I can relate to that one.
He and I were back very early after the end of the war. We were back in college. So
the two of you went to Eastern Michigan?
Yep.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, Bob Archer had a blanket. He was given a rare honor for a Michigan State Normal College athlete. He got a blanket for having 4 years of participation on the Michigan State Normal College track team. And they've always had, Eastern Michigan is still a track power, national track power. You know?
That's very true. Well, tell me a little bit about what happened to some of the other crewmen, and because we've got about 4 or 5 more minutes to go, and tell me what happened to Walter Sebastian. This was the pilot who lost his arm and came back to outside of Chicago. What did he end up doing?
Well, he went through a number of hospitals. He started in I'm trying to think of the name of it. He was eventually in Belfast, where his arm was amputated, and then he got put in a regular prison camp while he was just waiting to be sent back to the States, and he was eventually taken back. I think he was flown. Yeah, he was flown back, and he went to Chicago, and he had all of these addresses of prisoners that he had to visit. He wanted to visit everybody in the Chicago area who had a son in a prison camp, and to assure them that their son was alive and well, and that's part of the book too.
That was a great story, because also some of the other crew members, when they got home, they got in their car and went to Chicago to see him.
Yeah, and they said with one arm he was scared him driving. He's whipping around corners, and he was a wild driver.
I could remind our audience, this is the days before automatic transmission. So he's driving with one hand, shifting and clutching and all these other things all at the same time. And,
yeah.
Well, I think it's great. What about some of the other ones? Is there anybody that you would like to talk about specifically?
I think I think he was a ball turret gunner. Was by the name of Slingland. He got when he got back, he took the alternative of taking an early discharge, and he got his degree in engineering. And when I talked to him on the phone, some of the story I got from telephone conversations with him, and he said that we were going to try to get together as many members of the crew as possible to help me in writing this book. And he said it would have to be close enough so he could drive there, because he would never get on an airplane again in his life.
I remember reading that, thinking, how humorous is that? I could understand that, though. We could all probably relate to that, considering his last flight had been so exciting.
Yes, indeed.
Being shot out of the sky.
Yeah,
the very definition of excitement.
Yeah,
I have to remember when I got done my last day of being a pilot, I got out, threw my helmet across the field, and said, "Okay, I've pushed the envelope long enough for this to happen again." Yeah. Well, this story that you're telling, Bill, is so fascinating, and I want to just, in the last couple of minutes, I want to bring Jeff back into it and talk about how important it is that we get our dads, our uncles, or whoever it happens to be, to tell these stories. And Jeff, I'm going to kind of throw it to you, because you were talking about this earlier this morning, about what we need to do.
Absolutely. We're losing veterans from World War II, especially, many hundreds a day, perhaps more. And we need to learn from our history. That's not coming just from a history teacher. That comes from all of us, that these stories with these men passing so quickly every day, these people need to tell their stories, get it on camera, get it on tape recorder, family members out there, whatever is easiest. Uncle Hank, Bill here, has written a book, but we don't need to write books. We can get it on tape. We can get it on a piece of film, and so that generations forever into the future will understand their commitment and their sacrifice.
I'm always amazed when I go to the VA hospital and I look at all these men and women over there. I wonder, what's their story?
Yes, sir.
Bob?
Yeah. Oh.
No, Dale, we just had a caller call in, make a comment. That's all. He didn't want to come on the air.
Okay. What do you have to say?
He just had to say that he loved the program.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things that they don't know about the Stalag. We see the Great Escape.
I know. There are so many stories that
Stalag
we need to tell.
17.
And we're out of time. I think what we're going to do, Bill, is I'm going to have to end this up, but I want to thank you so very much for being on Veterans Radio. today, and we'll get together and talk more about this book, and hopefully I will get to talk to you on the phone, and if you show up at one of the military writers conferences, I'll see you there.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, sir.
I expect to stay here in Florida, but call me and we can talk more about it, okay?
Okay, we'll put something together for that. And Jeff, I want to thank you so very much for being on Veterans Radio. I want to remind our audience next week we're going to be talking about the Wounded Warrior Project, so don't miss that. Wounded Warrior Project. And we'll be talking to you next week. Until then, you are dismissed.
All views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily of Veterans Radio or WDEO. Veterans Radio is a production of Veterans Radio, LLC.